Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk a bit about simulation exercises and why they are not as useful as many people believe them to be. Now, I am talking about this in reference to disability, so disability simulation exercises. What I mean by that are here are some examples. It could be an exercise where people are told to use a wheelchair for a day to see what it is like to be a wheelchair user. Or
through play, and we were ecstatic that we were asked to help them out and use the waterproof wheelchairs so that the kids and the teachers could get a better understanding of what's going on.
It was interesting because you sort of have to take on the personality of everybody around you. Like, what is your reaction to me in the wheelchair? Or what is that person that's coming towards me? What is their reaction towards the wheelchair? And you have to take all that on and try to make people feel comfortable with your own disability. It's kind of opposite.
It's definitely an eye-opening experience for everyone involved.
To wear blindfolds for a day to see what it's like to be blind. Or to put headphones on, noise-canceling headphones on to simulate being deaf. A lot of these simulation exercises are touted as being able to increase once my dogs are about to fight. Please stop, George. But they're touted to increase empathy and awareness. But as research has shown, they haven't. And I'm not gonna. My dogs are fighting. Hey! Stop it, George. But what I was saying before my dogs started growling and fighting is that I'm not gonna go into all of the research because that's just not what I'm gonna do. Number one, it's not very interesting to a lot of people, and also if you want to read the research, you can. But the main problem with simulation exercises, which before research has even been done on it, disabled people were still saying that it wasn't good, is because number one, disability is not something that you can take on and off at will. If you're disabled all the time. It's not, I choose to not be disabled today, so yeah. Yes, disability can be fluid and your abilities can change from day to day, but it is not as simple as, I don't feel like using a wheelchair today, so I'm just not gonna do it. Or I choose to not be blind today. I don't feel like dealing with the hassle of living in a society that is built for sighted people, so I'm just gonna choose not to be blind today. So it doesn't really give people an idea of it because they're just seeing it from the perspective of that one time they did that, when the experience of disabled people is much more complicated than one day or one simulation exercise could possibly show them. Another issue with this is along the same lines. It others disabled people. It makes them into a them. It makes disabled people into a them, like an us versus them, and not in a way like non-disabled people being against them, but in a way that we are indifferent. Instead of reinforcing how we're still people, we make the experience some foreign experience, some alien experience, when it's really just a part of the human experience. Disability is a normal part of being human. But the reason it others people is because these simulation exercises don't take into account accommodations and how disabled people adapt to their impairments, and they do their best to make do with what they have, because we live in a very inaccessible society. But instead, you're having non-disabled people cosplay as disabled people, but it doesn't show the real experience. It doesn't show how, yeah, if you're in a wheelchair, it can be hard to get things off of a top shelf, but someone may come up with a system to be able to do it. But for a non-disabled person who's, my dog is squeezing his toy right now, but George, can you not? But for a non-disabled person who is just sitting in a wheelchair for a day, they are not going to see this, because it's not a lifelong thing they have to live with. So you're not going to find ways to adapt, because it's like, oh, once this day is over, I never have to deal with it again, so I'll just be inconvenienced for a day, and then I'll get over it. It also incites pity, because for people that aren't disabled, if you suddenly have this sprung on you, you're gonna be like, wow, this sucks. It sucks to, let's say they were simulating like CP, and they had people tie one arm behind their back, and they're like, wow, it sucks to only be able to use one hand. But what they don't realize is, for many people, for people that were born with their disability, or they've, like, it's been a part of their life for most of their life, we don't know any different. But also for people that acquire their disability, since it's gonna be a part of them for the rest of their life, they don't have a choice but to learn how to accept it. Either that, or you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life. And what I will say is, the one thing simulation exercises are good for is architecture. And the reason that is let's say an architect is building something and they don't know how to make it wheelchair accessible. If they go around in a wheelchair for a day, they can get an idea of how to make things accessible. But of course, you don't want that to be an architect's only like understanding of disability. You also need to have focus groups and actually talk to disabled people. You don't want it to just be non-disabled people doing these simulation exercises and then being like, okay, got it, I know exactly what it's like to be disabled, so this is exactly what disabled people need. Because, as I've said, it's a lot more complicated than that. And simulation exercises, oh, my dog's almost knocked over my camera. Can you guys not fight? But simulation exercises have a hard time showing the breadth of disabilities. It's very hard for a simulation exercise to show that not all blind people have zero sight. a lot of them have some sight and are considered legally blind, but they don't have zero. So, and it could be very hard for a simulation exercise to replicate that. In short, what I mean by that whole big point is that it simplifies disability by making it like, this is what it's like to be blind, this is what it's like to be deaf, this is what it's like to use a wheelchair. And it's not always true, because there are many different experiences. And that's something we have to keep in mind before we have a program at a school that's like, oh, it's Disability Awareness Month, so we're gonna do simulation exercises to increase awareness and empathy. It's not necessarily the case that it does, because it doesn't always click for people in their heads that this is someone's actual experience. But part of why it doesn't click for people is that a lot of times actual disabled people are not used in these exercises, so they're not there to say, well, yeah, you're simulating this, but it's a bit more complicated than this, or this is what I do if I run into that barrier. And the reason I want to talk, the thing that made me think about this was none other than a poll on Charles Peralo's page. And this was a few weeks ago now, maybe even a month or two ago, but he made a poll that was like, if you had to lose one of these, which would it be? And it was hearing, sight, speech, or unsure. And while that's not a simulation exercise, I believe it's along the same lines. It is a thought exercise that makes people without these disabilities think about what it would be like to have this disability, when that's not really helpful for actual disabled people. And also it's not helpful to the non-disabled person, because what you imagine being disabled is probably not the reality of disabled people. So then you're gonna be like, oh, this makes me so grateful that I don't have to go through this. And that is not a good way to increase empathy or understanding. We don't want pity, because yes, my disability does make my life harder, and sometimes my impairment, CP, in and of itself makes my life very difficult. But many of the things that are hard for me are created by society and are a byproduct of ableism. And these thought exercises fail to recognize this. And I want to say I'm not hating on Charles Peralo, but I will say that this illustrates that his polls where he's trying to start a conversation, they're starting a conversation, but is it of any use to anyone? Does it help anyone? Or is it just random people online spreading more misinformation because they don't know better? Obviously, non-disabled people are gonna have a lot to say under that post, and even Charles himself wrote, well, since I'm a content creator, I could not lose hearing or speech, so I would have to pick sight. there are many creators on this platform that are deaf. There are people that cannot speak verbally, so they may use like AAC or different devices and means of communication. When I saw that, I was like, Charles, you know that disabled people are on this platform because you've drawn attention to my channel, and that attention was not good. I got a lot of really disgusting comments from people I believe to be his subscribers that were mocking my stutter and being like, oh, I expected to see a hot girl when I clicked on this and it wasn't. I'm like, I don't care if stupid men on the internet think I'm unattractive, whatever. But I will say, him drawing attention to me was not necessarily a good thing, because he has a lot of hateful people in his audience, even if he himself does not intend to be hateful. So something I would want to say to Charles is, you really have to talk to your audience about not being shitty people in the comments of other people. And I know you can't police everybody and stop everybody from what they're gonna do, but if you don't condemn this behavior, they're gonna continue to do it, and they're gonna do it in your name. And do you really want that? Do you really want people that are fans of you to be spreading hate in your name? I would like to believe that's not something Charles wants. I'm not saying Charles can't do these polls anymore. He could do whatever the hell he wants. But I will say, you should think twice before you do it, and think, is this really gonna add anything to the conversation, or is it just gonna add more white noise? Because we don't need more white noise. We have lots of that. We have lots of people that don't experience something on a daily basis that are speaking on something they don't know about. And I'm not saying you can't speak on things you don't know about, but I will say, I, for one, always think twice. If I know that I'm not informed on something, I'm not gonna talk about it. So, yeah, that's about all I had to say, except one thing I do really want to say is, to all the people who make fun of me in comments, and this is a small minority, and I'm not saying this to get sympathy, because I don't need sympathy, and I know I get much more positive comments, and not positive but hopeful comments, than I do these hateful ones. But anything you say to me about my stutter or my disability or my looks or anything, I have said to myself my entire life. So you aren't saying anything to me that's groundbreaking. You're just parroting what I've said in my head for my entire life. So, wow, you're so original and so edgy. And that's all I have to say for this video. If you learned something, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you have not already and you would like to see more of my content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye.